ICQ Podcast Episode 380, Friedrichshafen 2022 Interviews Part 1. Well, hello and welcome for Amateur Radio enthusiasts to this our 380th episode of the ICQ Amateur Radio Podcast, supported this episode by our monthly and subscription donors. In this episode, Martin, M1MLB, is joined by Chris, Mike 0, Tango Charlie Hotel, Martin, Mike 0, Sierra Golf Lima, Frank, Kilo 4, Foxtrot Mike Hotel, Bill, Whiskey Charlie 3 Bravo, and Leslie, Golf 0 Charlie India Bravo, to discuss latest amateur radio news. Myself, Colin, M6BRY, rounds up the news in brief, and this episode's feature, we start to review the Friedrichshafen show this year with a round of interviews in our first block of news from that show. Well, as always, it's our very kind donors that keep this show on the internet for you and advert free. So we'd like to thank the monthly and subscription donors this episode who are helping us out, paying our way, etc. And they find value in the show, and what they do is they go to icqpodcast.com/donate and they send that value to us in a monetary figure that, as I say, helps us out in the running of the show. We'd like you to consider us if you've enjoyed what we've done in the show today by visiting that website at icqpodcast.com/donate. As they turn your value to the show to a monetary figure, take one of the options or choose one of your own and say pop it our way, and we'd greatly appreciate that, and that helps us pay our way and keeps our bills paid and your ICQ podcast coming to you every fortnight. Right, now we're going to get on with that show, and so we're going to join Martin, Chris, Frank, Bill and Leslie to discuss and generate thoughts about the latest amateur radio news, including action against illegal equipment and a new radio net in Irish. As always, hope you enjoy.
Well, hi guys, welcome to episode 380 of the ICQ podcast and tonight's news roundtable for that episode. Tonight, I'm going to go in reverse order of my list. I have Mr. Leslie Butterfield, G0CIB. Hi, Leslie.
Oh, good evening, Martin. Normally you put me first, not in reverse order, but it doesn't matter. Very good evening and great to be back again.
Yeah, good to have you. And let's say, great you can make it. We also have Mr. Frank Howell, K4FMH, over the other side of the pond. Hi, Frank.
Martin, did you say 380?
380, mate.
380. Wow. Martin Rothwell, we've got to get the social committee together to plan for the 400th. Good to be with everybody.
Take a while, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, considering I only signed up for 10, I've done 370 more than I said I would.
Well, we've only ever released 10, that's the problem. The rest of them we record, they just go into the ether.
Oh, yeah. Oh, but hey, we enjoy ourselves. What the hell? Also, we have Mr. Martin Rothwell, M0 SGL, as he's likely to try and get me into trouble again.
380. Oh, no, that was 180, and that was darts, isn't it? I'm thinking that's something completely different. Anyway, hello.
Hello. Say, good to have you with us tonight. And last but not least, we have Mr. Chris Howard, M0TCH. Hi, Chris.
Hello, guys. Hello. How are we all doing this evening?
Yeah, well, it's good to have you tonight, and as I say, you're just back from your big trip, but the guys will hear all about that towards the end.
Well, and just on that subject, 380, flipping heck. You're right, we're not far off 400, are we? That's going to be a big milestone, isn't it?
Certainly is. Another 20, we do 26 a year, so it's probably going to be around about April next year, I would guess we'll hit the 400. That's without working out for definite. That's just a quick calculation in my head.
See if we can get some budget off of Colin for a party or something.
There you go.
Yeah. Right, let's start with our news stories. And the first news story, Portugal takes action against illegal communications equipment. But I didn't find that many, but it was worth a shot. Chris, do you want to go first on this one?
Well, yes. As a story, it's not that spectacular, really. So this is the authorities over in Portugal that decided to do an inspection of 26 vessels. This was the ANACOM, who are the regulator over there, a bit like Ofcom or the FCC, alongside some other agencies. So there was the National Maritime Authority, which is a bit like the Marine Maritime Police, and also there's another authority called the Authority for Working Conditions. So they all got together and inspected a bunch of vessels, including fishing vessels, tourist vessels, that sort of thing, and just checking out a bunch of things, including the radio communications equipment that was installed. And the story goes, of the 26 that were inspected, one was found to have, and this is translated using Google Translate, so I don't know how accurate this is, but it says an illicit transmitter receiver of the land mobile services was apprehended. So not a lot of detail. One assumes it's maybe a PMR radio that's been reprogrammed to perhaps work on the marine band frequencies. I don't know, but their concern was that it may interfere with other users. It may be an issue in emergencies, that sort of thing. So they've seized that. I mean, they'll have to go, I guess, buy a new radio that's of appropriate type, I suppose. But that's the story.
Yeah, you see, I can't understand personally, Chris, why, if you're going to sea, I wouldn't want to chance it with some old bit of gear that somebody else has flogged me on the Jeep that's not suitable for the job. I know if we really wanted to be naughty boys, we could probably reprogram Baofeng UV5Rs for marine band. But
it may well be, that's what it doesn't say, but it may well be it's being that perhaps a very wide band type Far Eastern radio, perhaps that they've seized it. It's not details are not there, but could well be something like that.
But when your life depends on it, and you've also had to sit the exam to get your marine license, I would suggest, stupid, in my opinion. But there you go. Martin, what's your thoughts?
Stupid, I would also agree with, but perhaps in a different term. I think they mentioned confiscating a radio. They said they inspected a lot of vessels. One of them was not type approved. In this case, an illicit transmitter of the land mobile service was seized. And I'm guessing what they're calling land mobile service is what we in the UK know as PMR. This is, as you mentioned, it's a life-saving tool that you might have, because let's face it, mobile phones don't work out at sea, or at least not when you go far out to sea. To me, it's almost like confiscating someone's contraceptives, because that's going to stop people, isn't it? What happened to trigger this? What radio did they confiscate? If it was a Baofeng, maybe. I mean, I'd have been more inclined to slap them with a hefty fine and say, you have to now prove that you've got the right kind of radio. But if it was of a land mobile service, i.e. PMR, say, for example, something like a Hytera or a Motorola, VHF radio correctly programmed with the right channels, I personally would think that confiscating that is, if anything, just putting the vessel in danger. I mean, okay, if you're confiscating it and saying you can't go out unless you've got a radio again, maybe, but if you're taking that radio off of them, you're now leaving them without the means to call for help. I don't know. I mean, so obviously we don't know the full details because they haven't posted this stuff out there, but if you're just using a sort of a reprogrammed Hytera or Motorola, okay, they might not be the official marine radios, but they're quite a clean output on them. There's nothing wrong with them. At worst, they're just not waterproof.
You're right, they're not necessarily waterproof.
Well, you might be able to get waterproof ones, but they're not going to float like the specific marine ones are they?
Yeah. But you have to also realise is that whereas you and I can look at these sort of things and make a reasonable decision, the marine band, the people are not particularly, they haven't done the same sort of training as us. They have not the same knowledge as us. So, you've got to look at this sensibly and say, I understand that the regulators are doing the right thing, in fairness, because some of the boats they checked over were pleasure boats, the ones that take people out and along the coast during the summer. And the last thing you want is one of those to have a dodgy radio on it, I would have thought.
I don't know, but if I went on a pleasure boat, I would rather they had a means to contact someone, whatever that means was, than no means to contact someone.
Just checking the story, the one that was caught was was actually a fishing vessel. But I agree, if you're paying passengers, then actually it's obviously important that you have all the appropriate safety gear, and I would expect them to have the right stuff.
In which case, a heavier fine would probably be, probably a better bet. That way, you hit them where it hurts, and we do need to do something about this. Whereas you could have spent 150 quid on Icon radio or something and been done with it.
Yeah, but the thing is, you've got to put your stick in the sand and say, this is the standard we accept. This is what you signed up for when you passed your test. This is the whole 9 yards. You can't just have free-for-all because, all right, if one gets away with it, then next year most of them will have got away with some cheap form of radio and probably sold their marine radios. So,
but of course, if all they've lost is the equivalent of a £15 Baofeng, what's to say you're not going to do it again? Just go and buy another one, all right? eBay here in a couple of days.
Yeah, and have your boat seized with a bit of luck.
Yeah, well, that's what you need. You need to hit it where it hurts. That's the only way you can realistically do it. But,
yeah. So we've been quite long on this, but I'm going to Leslie, go on. What's your thoughts?
Oh, well, I've been listening to what people are saying. My thoughts are that something has triggered this inspection. It hasn't caught very many. I believe it's just caught just one, but something has happened for them to come to the decision that this was needed. Okay, and then they've done it. As far as the marine kit is concerned, that tends to be type approved. You can't do what us radio amateurs do and just knock stuff together. No, it has to be a type approved equipment, and the layout, how the equipment is installed, is laid down for safety reasons. Radio amateurs, what you do yourself, it doesn't matter two hoots, but when you put it in what I call a critical safety environment, you've got to do things properly. That's just my thoughts for what they're worth. Over to you.
Yeah, agree with you 100%. And on an amateur variant of this, our foundation license holders are supposed to only use type-approved equipment. They're not supposed to build transmitters unless it's a type-approved kit.
I do recall reading something about that, but I would have to look up the details.
Yeah, well, I believe it's all type-approved. And that hit home to me at the weekend because I was thinking I could lend one of our new guys a new M7, my 80-meter transceiver I built. And then I suddenly realised he can't use it because it's not type approved. So he could use it and receive, but he can't use the transmitter.
Martin, the way we got round that at the club, I know the transceivers you're talking about. You're talking about the little Pixies?
No, this is a MCARS 80 from the Milton Keynes Club.
Yeah, what we did was we used it as a building project so that the novice could build it, but the let's say a class full license, it's a full license holder, was there actually operating it, and under the club's license. So it wasn't actually used under the novice license. That's the way we got around that particular thing.
Yeah, I appreciate you can do that, but I was going to leave it with the guy to play as much as he wanted, and then I realised he couldn't. So, sorry, Frank, we've been a little bit round the houses, backwards and forwards. This is a European thing. What's your thoughts?
Well, it's European in nature for this one, but, we have the same type of thing over here in the States with regulations, if you will, about ships on the coastline and borders before you get in international waters of the U.S. I tend to agree with everybody and everything's been said, but Leslie and I may be on the same wavelength here. Something happened, and it could be in one of two realms. It could be in the marketplace where there were some non-type approved, whatever illicit transceivers in this case means, and they decided, well, let's just do some checks and see. They do that with drinking and driving in the U.S. They'll have stops where they'll check your license and basically smell your breath. And they take numbers and they know how many vehicles travel that road, and they can compute a rate from that. And I've actually done some of that. Or it could have been the maritime police were reviewing what they do. You get a new chief, captain, whatever, and says, hey, are we checking radios? Oh, we haven't done that for 10 years. Well, we need to do it. As Leslie said, something triggered this, and the results are quite good. 1 out of 26 were in violation. That's at least a reasonably low rate of violation there. So I'm glad to know that my Madeira port wine is in good hands as it's shipped from Portugal.
Well, at least as I say, it was well done. I think it's a good thing it happened. And yeah, I hope they do it again, in fairness. And more countries around the world check the radios because they are safety devices. Okay, moving to our next news story. A successful Morse code day in an open-air museum in Arnhem. And I think this is great because Morse is still alive. People like to see it. What's your thoughts, Leslie?
Like you said, it's a successful Morse code day in the open air museum at Arnhem. And Veron reports on June the 12th, radio amateurs gave information and demonstrations about Morse code as a means of communication to the public at the open air museum. And I believe that guests could try their own Morse skills. I think the thing is with this, and I know people think Morse is a bit old-fashioned. I do use it myself, but this is really about getting the general public involved and interested in radio. Far, far too many stations I've seen, and they say, oh, yeah, we're putting a demonstration station on, and what you end up is a radio amateur just working DX, and he's not getting the public involved. I think that's a bad thing. It really doesn't work at all. You're about getting people interested in the hobby, getting involved, hands-on, and this is what it's about. So, yeah, good on them. Good on them. That's what I say, Martin.
Yeah, I think so. Frank, I know this is another European story, unfortunately. It wasn't a lot out of the States this time, but you've just had Field Day out in the States, and I'm sure that on a number of GOTA stations, they would have been doing this sort of thing as well, wouldn't they?
Martin, I can't give you a reliable count. I'm sure there are some GOTA stations that use Morse and demo it. I would say the majority of them do sideband or certainly voice if the GOTA station is VHF or UHF. But certainly the GOTA station concept is the portal into, hey, what are you folks doing here? Oh, we're doing ham radio. Come and see. We'll show you. You can talk to people around the world or whatever the particular pitch is. So you're spot on with Morse code certainly being illustrated. And this is a good thing, the term intangible cultural heritage. And it's clearly that, whether you're a CW operator or not, that was the first mode, if you will, that we practiced in the wireless and made the wireless something that was a demonstrable activity. So I think this is a good one. I enjoyed reading the story.
Yeah, I do too, Frank. And yeah, I often tell people that Morse code was the first digital mode in amateur radio, because it was. You switched the transmitter on and off in them days. Chris, we used to, when we were required, help out on HMS Belfast and do many, many Morse certificates and show people all sorts of things when we were up there. So it's kind of what we used to do as well, isn't it?
It is very similar to that, and it always seemed to spark an interest, particularly with children. Morse code, a little bit secret, a little bit, mum and dad can't work out what's going on because we've got this secret code. Who's always seemed to be very popular, and of course, there's that spy type thing where people used to use Morse code as spies, that sort of thing, which has always got that kind of narrative, I suppose. Just something that Frank touched on there, that's intangible cultural heritage. Something out I saw, and you'll hear my report later from Friedrichshafen. There is a There is a scheme, a campaign, I suppose, trying to get Morse code seen as part of our cultural heritage. And I think, looking at Google a minute ago, I think there is a campaign to try and get UNESCO to accept Morse code into a list of things that make up our cultural heritage. I don't think that's happened just yet, but the story suggests here that the Netherlands do recognise that Morse code is a cultural heritage item, and it received that status back in 2014. So it's something that they take seriously. But yeah, no, absolutely, certainly my experience of trying to promote the hobby, getting kids to send their name in Morse code is something you'll get a queue of kids all day long wanting to do that. Once you get the first one to do it, they're always a little bit shy at the start. Once you get the first one to do it and they see what's going on, then they all want to get involved. So I'm sure it's very popular, and I'm sure it's helping to promote the hobby, I suppose. So yeah, all good.
Yeah, well, we had many a fun day doing that on the Belfast. Martin, last words on this one. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's amazing the IWN didn't want the radio station to stay on board. That was an absolute no-brainer. The way that the kids absolutely interacted, I remember that. As Leslie said, it's nice to have anything that gets the public's hands-on with any kind of thing like this, with Morse code. We always say is don't sit with your back to the public screen 5.9 next up, pile up, get them involved, get them doing things. The certificates on the Belfast were a classic example of that. It's nice to see this being promoted. It's nice to see it's not obsolete because it is still used, but it's nice to see something like this having life breathed into it. As you said, when you and Chris in particular used to do this on the Belfast, the look on the kids' faces, their eyes just lit up, especially when there was a threat of Chris going over the board of the side of the boat if he got the kids' names wrong. But I think it was more for them to send this code, to have their name decoded or something like that, rather than just talking into a radio. When I was a kid, I spoke into a walkie-talkie for the first time. It was absolute magic. I could hear my voice wirelessly. But of course, everyone's got Wi-Fi, wireless phones, everything like that now. There's no fun in that, is there? But the secret code it's magical, and it's the history. It's it's the original digital mode. It's what effectively with spark gap transmitters and everything like that got radio going. So it's lovely to see it being kept alive, and hats off to the team that were behind doing that.
Yeah, it was great fun. The other thing I used to see, Chris and I used to see, is it wasn't just the children. The children would have a go, and then the mums would have a go, or the grandparents would have a go, and sometimes the grandparents could actually do Morse, which was great. And I've forgotten about what you just said. I used to joke and say, if Chris gets your name wrong, I'm going to throw him over the side. And I seem to remember one little cherub sending his name as something like Fred, for argument's sake. He'd sent Fred, and Chris says Fred, and he said, no, my name's Harry. Throw him over the side, Martin.
I remember him, little tinker.
do you know what? I'd think it'd been even funnier if Chris had just we'd have had a set of blown up armbands, and Chris had just reached them. Okay, that would have made us smile, wouldn't it, on the kid's face?
Oh yeah. But that was fun. Sorry, Chris. But,
Martin.
Yeah.
A slight correction. You do know the first communication device was an Apple.
Go on then.
No, it limited memory, 1 byte. That was it.
Bubba.
Sorry, guys.
No. That's one we're going to leave in, Leslie.
Sorry. Can I just add for good measure?
Oh, dear.
Couldn't resist that.
Bill's just joined us. Bill, I'll bring you in on the next news story because we probably threw this one and you're not sure where we've got to on. But Mr. Bill Barnes, WC3B, has joined us. He thought he wasn't going to be able to, so that's a good one. Right, let's have a look. GNU Radio aims to improve accessibility and usability. Now, I'm going to get Frank to go first on this one, and I'll leave you fairly close to the end, Leslie, on this one.
Please let me know what this is about, because I'm trying to get my head around this, and to be honest, I don't know. So yeah. I'm all ears on this one.
Yeah. So, Frank, what's your thoughts?
Well, many of our listeners probably know, and know perhaps better than any of us do, the history of software-defined radio. It actually began with what was then called the Raytheon, or not called the Raytheon Corporation then, but what later became the Raytheon Corporation out of ES Systems. And so the idea that you can radically change how we detect signals or modulate signals for transmission, as the case might be, using certain devices like a field programmable gate array and that sort of thing. Okay, wonderful idea. Now, what are you going to do with it, kids? So software-defined radio moved along more or less in academic and commercial R&D territories until the little USB dongle, I believe first promoted by someone in Italy who said you can do more than just watch television with this thing. And so the little USB dongle's given many of us many hours of both pleasure and operating and using a software-defined receiver. So GNU radio is a decade old. It may be slightly longer than that, but it's a free and open source software development toolkit, i.e., you have a frame for a car, you got a motor, you may have a steering wheel, the rest is up to you. There's a lot of that goes with free and open source software. There's some free and open source software that's fully polished and finished. So GNU Radio is that toolkit that gives object-oriented, higher-level processing blocks. I want the DSP here, I want the input there, the output over there, and these kinds of things. And it helps people develop the software part of the radio on top of the black box, if you will, underneath. Now, our friend Dan Romanchek with ARDC, they've given money to the GNU Radio group to enhance the ability to use this toolkit and to do bigger, better, faster stuff. And it's particularly the case focusing on the Windows and the Mac OS platform. It's been dominated largely by Linux users. And that really cuts down the number of amateur radio operators, for example, who are going to get into it because not as many of them are Linux users. So I've kind of opened the door. I'm sure Bill can pick that up and really enhance that, Martin. But it's a thing, it's a grant to really help GNU Radio reach more people who don't have as much programming talent, if you will, but who have ideas and can implement them through what these new platform interfaces will render.
Well, that was a good introduction, Frank. Well, it sounds like, Bill, if you're ready, Frank has put you in the frame and I know you're more computer literate, software literate, and a Linux user. What's your thoughts, Bill?
Yeah, this is a great story. The press release talks about, easier installation of GNU Radio for Windows and Mac. I use GNU Radio on Linux here. Most of the stuff I use is basically drag and drop. So for instance, I'll, process a signal and I'll say, let's decode it with an FM decoder, and I'll grab that component and drop it on the screen and run the signal through it. It also allows you to build your own modules for, rapid development of pretty much any signal modulation you could possibly imagine. And it will give you a piece to reuse over and over and over again with other radio components. Now, this thing is pretty intense depending on the signals you're trying to work with. When I was trying this with the SDR dongle, it was pretty much maxing out my Linux box pretty effectively. So having this available on the Windows platform, I don't know how much that will really improve. But man, that new M1 chip the Mac guys are using, I'm wondering if that's going to be the killer platform for this. But we'll know here as they go along, because the part of the grant that I don't think people really understand is they're going to be able to hire developers to do this versus getting volunteers. Anytime you have an open source project where you can pay people to work on it, those projects always take off and they become shining examples. I'm trying to think of some off the top of the head. The only one I can think of is LibreOffice. I know there's some folks that are getting paid to take care of LibreOffice, and therefore it's a fully developed cross-platform productivity suite, and it's open source. So I'm thinking this is nothing but good news all the way around for future experimentations and future SDR development.
Yeah, good information you gave us, Bill, on that one. And I think they're probably going to bring Windows in because whether we like it or not, there's still a massive Windows install base out there. And if it brings people who've got Windows PCs in to look at this, and a lot of amateurs have Windows-based PCs, then we may get more development quicker. That's what I'm thinking anyway. Chris, what's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, GNU Radio is interesting. It's not something I know much about. I did go to a presentation a few years ago at the RSGB convention, and it looks very powerful. It's a very graphical tool, and it's interesting that they've got some funding, which is great, to develop it further. So yeah, all good really. It's funny you mentioned the M1 there, Bill. So you'll hear in my interview with SDR Play whichever episode that comes out from my recent trip to Friedrichshafen, they're working on the new version of SDR Uno, which has got a new name, which you'll hear in the. I won't tell you now because you can wait for the feature. But they're supporting the Mac M1 going forward when that comes out. So that could be interesting in their native product. So yeah, interesting stuff.
It certainly is. It certainly is. Martin, I know you're pretty busy. I doubt if you've played with this sort of stuff, have you?
Never played. I mean, I'm not even going to pretend I totally understand this. I play with SDRs. I've had the RTL SDR. I think that the TV stick that I think Frank mentioned at the start of this segment. I've played with that. I forget what software I used with it. I can picture it. I can't place it. I've had a slightly more updated version. I think of pretty much the same thing. And now I play with an SDR Play, ironically, and I love the software for that. It's really, really good. But I think any kind of grants into developing this kind of software has got to be a good thing because, yeah, okay, you could argue that the software that comes with the SDR Play is pretty decent, but competition's good because it means that other people try harder, and the more you bring in, the more people are likely to put more effort into their products. And I'm not saying that any product's particularly bad, but the more you can develop these things, the better and the more fun we can get out of our products. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I think it'll be good news, Martin, like you say. Now, Leslie, do you have questions? Because I'm sure the boys can help.
No, Martin, it's not I have no knowledge of this whatsoever, so I'm a total newbie on this one, and I've just been listening with intent and, trying to sort of get around my head. I have played with one of those little dongles you were talking about. It wasn't too successful. I'm not quite sure why, but would I play with this? Yes, eventually. Shift work and 1,000 other things permitting, but it's all sorts of things coming up in the hobby, and this is just one of them. And I see what happens with interest.
Yeah, I think what will happen, Leslie, is as time goes on, we're now moving towards software-defined radios that we're using. As time goes on, chances are we'll be teaching how to use these sort of tools as part of your amateur radio course rather than how a superhet works or a TRF radio works, in all fairness. And I don't mean it nastily because the hobby's moving on. It has to. We bring new people in and youngsters in. We have to move with the times.
I'm just trying to think how many years ago it was, Martin, but when I used to sort of be a proper radio operator, all we had was a box where our knee was. That was the transceiver, and a keyboard and a screen. And one antenna. There was no adjusting anything. It changed frequency for us. It did this. And Well, I think we've certainly in the civilian world, it's very much going in that direction. Everything's going to be computer based.
Yeah, I think you're right. But an interesting subject nevertheless. So
Oh, yes.
Get on with. Right. Move to our next news story. Ham radio to the rescue. Well, I'm not going to say what I said in a pre-show ramble, but I would have thought if you go out with a vehicle, you really ought to have checked it if you're going any distance and done a
Please do.
Go on, Leslie, you can go first on this one.
Yeah, the story is ham radio to the rescue. Folks Forum reported on the 23rd of May, turned into emergency, but thanks to ham radio. Joe Wright, KG7JWW, other radio amateur operators, and Ted Ramison, it turned out just fine. A friend and I, this is according to the story, went to Lake Wentworth to test out new boats. When he got there, his Suzuki sidekick was making horrible noises, and he run out of oil. So he'd broken down out of cell phone range, and managed to get a phone relay, and managed to get in contact with his daughter, I believe, and got rescued that way. If you're going to go out, Martin's quite right. If you're going to go out, check your kit first. I mean, I know amateur radio is good, and in this case, it was used to rescue him. But please check your kit out first, guys.
Yeah, I believe that should be done. Frank, you mentioned about this as well when we were talking earlier.
Yes, I'm sure most hams, certainly those who have a handy-talkie, have carried it with them oodles of times with the thought that, okay, if there's trouble, I'll be able to call for help. And how many times did you have to? Fortunately, probably not that many. But here's an example of someone who was bailed out, as Leslie just described, by having his radio with him, and it worked out. One of the things about the story that, having been an old news reporter back a long time ago, is that the reporter put the actual name of the woman he was calling, and I'll bet you there are people trying to get her number, but whether that's good or bad is yet to be known. But certainly everything was revealed in the story. But it worked out. A lot of street cred for the hams when things like this happen. You had your radio with you, and you really needed it.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say it worked out, which is good. Bill, I mean, in the States, Bill, you guys have phone patch. We don't have that over here, so I'm sure I will pass a message on if somebody was stuck and I picked it up on the radio. And they gave me a phone number. I could then phone their next of kin. I wouldn't be able to do much more than that. But you guys have phone patch as well, don't you?
Well, they used to. A lot of repeater clubs dropped it over the years as cell phones took off. Maybe more down Frank's way, but definitely up around my way here. The phone patch stuff is pretty much gone.
Yeah, Bill, I know of no repeater that has one. Now there may be, but just by point of comparison, I don't know of anybody with still having a phone patch.
Yeah, and we actually had 2 or 3 in the 1980s that were open patches, meaning you just hit star, type the number in, and pound to hang up. Usually it was codes, and what you had to be a member of the club to use the patch because it cost money. But that's less common now with cell phones. But the problem I had with the story was I got hung up on the, rule number 1 of going and doing anything, go over your checklist, and things like checking the oil level in the vehicle before you leave is like, it's like step 3 or something. So I got hung up on that, guy. So, but I'm glad he was able to get assistance, and away they went.
Yeah, all seemed to end up well in the end, didn't it? Marty, what's your thoughts on this one?
The number you require is 555-43. Well, no, I'm only kidding. When I read this, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to say it, the word dipstick sprung to mind. And before anybody jumps there and says, you can't call him, no, I'm saying he should have used his dipstick and checked it to see how much oil was in his car before he goes out, especially on a long journey. I mean, okay, There's the old argument, the little red light on the dashboard. You can fix that. If the engine management light comes on, you take the bulb out, the problem goes away. I'm kidding before anyone thinks I do that. But yeah, I mean, as Bill said, your basic car maintenance. Check you've got oil. Check your tyre pressures. Have you got enough water in your washer fluid so you can clean your windows, that sort of stuff. Especially if you're going out. We know mobile phones don't work everywhere, especially, we talk about even in London, there are massive spots where mobile phones don't work. In a country like America, it's a much bigger, open, wider space for the cellular companies to cover those areas. It'll be very expensive, especially if the areas don't have many people traveling through them. It's probably not worth their while investing however much it costs to build a cell site. Keep a ham radio in your bag. It doesn't have to be an expensive one. Keep one in the car, even if it's just a Balvang UV5R or an equivalent and a magnetic antenna. You never know when it might bail you out. As I say, I take my radio with me in my car. I have an Anytone radio. We've mentioned them on the podcast before that I keep in my bag. Hopefully, I'll never need it. But to me, it's that little bit of comfort. If I ever do, for any reason, I know it's there. We've covered stories like this before, when people have had to have ambulances and stuff called through them, and it's bailed them out. Just another proof of it's another tool that you can use in the event that your cellular companies let you down.
Certainly is on that one. Chris, what's your thoughts?
Well, just to add on to what Martin was saying there. So I'll talk about this a bit more when we're talking about what we've been up to, but I've been doing quite a bit of SOTA recently. And I've been carrying multiple radios with me just in case, because when you're up on the mountains, it's unlikely you're going to get a phone signal. So I had my FT3, which has also got PRS, which is also quite useful as well for people can see where you are. But absolutely having multiple ways of getting in touch is always a good idea, especially if you're going somewhere where you're going to be out of range of normal communications like cell phones, etc., mobile phones.
Yeah, as I say, it's a good one because we're lucky being amateurs. We have the advantage of being able to put some form of communications with us and put it on the air fairly quickly. So yeah, good one. Right, moving to our last news story. There's an Irish language net happening, obviously, in Ireland. I didn't know where to go on this one, is the truthful answer, because I think it's great that they're keeping the Irish language in operation and to the forefront, but then it would exclude people with other languages because, and I'm not going to upset the Irish people or mean to, but we do have a problem of, things like French and German and English. There are multiple parts of the world that speak those three different languages. So, great in one part, not so great in another, I would suggest. Now, I'm going to go, Mr. Rothwell, what's your thoughts on this one?
My initial thoughts when I read this, and I think the language is called Gaelic. Please don't shout at me or send me lots of abuse on social media if it's not. My first thoughts were, does everybody in Ireland speak this? I think you mentioned that, perhaps, a majority of people in Ireland perhaps do. And then I thought, well, it doesn't bother me. I mean, if you tune into, our repeaters in the UK, especially the internet connected ones, XP that we run is a classic example of this. You can hear Polish, French, even Greek. And I don't think anybody really cares. I mean, okay, you can listen to it and maybe if you don't speak the language, you can't understand what's going on. But it's just people communicating. If you try and call in, you might not get understood. The only time then we ever said anything to anybody about foreign language on the repeaters was when there was one guy that was hogging the repeater and he was leaving it on all day, and all it was doing is just spurting out Italian, and nobody in the area understood what was going on. No one could get in. It was just one guy that was listening to it, and we had to say to him, you need to stop doing this. You're welcome to use it, but don't abuse it. But in this sense, if people want to talk in their native language or in their home language, personally, I don't have an issue with it.
Yeah, I'd say that's an interesting one. Chris, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm kind of similar to Martin. My son, I have no issues at all with people speaking whatever language they want on amateur radio. Little story on this: I was recently in Wales, in North Wales, in Snowdonia, and I had my radio going in the camper van on 2 meters, and I was just listening to people on a club net all speaking Welsh, and I thought that's pretty cool, keeping the language alive. And in fact, my ignorance really, it turns out in North Wales, a lot of people speak that as their kind of first language, speak Welsh. So it was, people would, the bus drivers were speaking to each other in Welsh, etc. And I'm guessing in parts of Ireland, it's probably their primary language, it's their first language is speaking Gaelic. So why not?
Yeah, well, as I said earlier, and this is just a side note here, both my grandchildren in Ireland have been taught Gaelic or Irish, the Irish language. They do it at school. My son and his wife can't speak it, but they take great delight when they go abroad of people that come up and try and sell them something in the street. And people that try and sell you stuff in the street are usually quite often multilingual, but I pretty much guarantee they won't be able to speak the Gaelic or Irish language. And I know that my two grandchildren take great delight in talking to them in Gaelic, and they struggle. And then the two of them walk off and leave the cellar bemused. So there's a one advantage to it, even though it's a bit naughty. Bill, what's your thoughts?
No other thoughts than what's already been said, and the fact that they're doing a net to keep it on the air. I think that's nice. They're doing it on a repeater now, but they said they're going to expand to maybe 40 or 80 meters in the future. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, there's only, 4,000... They don't call them amateurs in Ireland. They call them amateur experimenters. You get an amateur experimental license. It was 4,000, and probably only about half that are active. So it's good to get things. Anything going is good. I'm going to ask Frank. What's your thoughts?
It's an interesting story, and I agree with everything that's been said. One thought is that our friends over here in the States, to the north in Canada, have a similar situation with French Quebec and that part of Canada, of which French is the first language for many, although I guess many also speak English. And they've negotiated ways, to deal with that. And in this case, in Ireland, they're trying to preserve for lack of a better term, a native language that's being overrun by another one, English. And so I think they'll figure out a way. Frequency bands are our turf, and like any other turf battles or discussions about using that turf and for what and by whom, they'll work out, when it's appropriate to use them, and they'll get that right. So I agree with the sentiment, knowing a bunch of linguists, if they don't use it and their kids don't use it, they will forget it.
Yeah. And on what you said about Canada, it was nearly 25 years ago, because Mrs. B and I did our 25th wedding anniversary in Canada, and we did go to Quebec City and spent some time in Montreal, which is predominantly French speaking. And we were told by the rep who was with us is that if you're English or from the States, they will normally forgive you and change and talk to you in English. But if you're a Canadian and you don't speak French, you get a real hard time in Quebec. And that's what I was told. So there you go. Leslie, last words on this one.
I'm open on it. If that's what they want to do and that's what they want to use Hubby for, hey, why not? But if somebody comes back to you in English, the thing is with this hobby, we're worldwide, and we may be having a discussion in English, and a German station comes back or Polish station that comes back, and we use the radio terminology and we can have a contact. So I wouldn't make it too closed, but hey, if that's what people want to do, why not?
Yeah, no problems, no problems. And one last one, just to make you all smile. Same trip. It was actually a coach trip we went on, and we did a lot of the cities. And it sounds really strange. I'll explain it one day if anybody's interested. But when we left Montreal, I wandered across and got to the bakers and got a couple of trays of donuts for the coach and just shared them out. Yeah. And while I'm buying these donuts, because they were square root nothing in them days anyway, but while I'm buying these donuts, the young girl says, "Sorry, I don't speak English. I'm going to get my colleague." And she got her colleague, and the colleague dealt with me. And at the end of it, she said, "I don't recognise your accent. What part of the States are you from?" And I had to say I'm English.
Ouch.
No, it's fine. It's a
She
silly
meant
one.
well. She meant well, Mark.
Oh, yeah. No, there was nothing nasty about it. She's struggling. Fair enough. Anyway, that concludes our news stories with a bit of fun as well. Let's find out what the boys have been up to since we last got together. I'm going to go with Bill first, just in case he suddenly gets called away. So, Bill, what have you been up to?
Yeah, I do appreciate that because I do need to step out here soon. Had a really good month on the radio. I worked at the beginning of the month GB70E special event station on 15 meters and 17 meters single sideband QRP 5 watts. I did it on the KX3 because they were coming in so loud. I'm like, I wonder if I could work these guys QRP. And the answer is yes. Yes, I could. Likewise, the other morning, that would have been a week and a half ago, I worked VK6AS in Australia on FT8 at Greyline. So it was, dawn, getting to be dawn here, and it was dark over there, or just getting into the darkness over there, and I got them. So that was kind of good. And then I did 12 stations on the ARRL field day from the house. Right around 8 o'clock at night, I got home and turned the radio on. Dan's talked about this to me before. Every once in a while, you get in a groove where you can copy. This is the first time I've ever really experienced that. Normally, when I'm trying to copy CW, it's hard. And a contest, especially field day, was pretty good for that because people they turned their keyer speeds down a little bit, so they weren't doing that 25 to 30 word per minute crazy contest speed. Everybody was probably in the 18 to 20 words per minute. They were sending their calls 3 and 4 times, CQ field day. So I got the calls pretty easy. And then I had a run them for it looks like here about 15 minutes until my brain got fried, where I just banged out a whole bunch of CW stations for the first. Usually it's real struggle with me. Martin talks about this, but it is real. So you have to be in the right frame of mind. And your hearing has to be calm and perfect, and then the CW can come through, but you're kind of like interpreting in your head. Well, I'm sitting there and I'm typing in numbers and sections and 3-digit sections like they were just printed on the screen for me. That never happened before, so that's hopefully a good sign. Maybe CW is finally starting to get through my skull after 31 years. And I worked the most unusual station on FT8, and this is the last one I have to share. I worked a VC9 Cat Girl, and I had to go look this one up. Apparently, there's a Canadian group running a special events for the next few weeks where they have some special call signs that are like internet meme based. This is the first one I actually saw, and I worked them, but I thought that was kind of funny. And I do want to mention for the listeners, because this will come out on Sunday, which means it will be the 13 Colonies special event start weekend, and that runs through the 1st through the 7th. So keep your eyes and ears open for K2A through, I think it's K2N. Plus, there will be a station GB13 call, and TM13 call. So there will be some European stations that are also participating in a special event. So there will be a lot of fun stuff on the radio here in the next few weeks.
Well, that sounds like A, you've been having fun, and B, there's going to be even more fun had in the next few days then, Bill. So that's a good one. Okay, Frank, what have you been up to apart from catching COVID?
Well, I've not been doing a lot with ham radio. I did catch COVID and tested positive and was positive for about 5 days. I had been vaccinated and double boosted, so it was a very mild case. Very fortunate to have Scott Wright, K0MD, up at Mayo Clinic, who's head of their COVID task force, check in with me and advise me. And I had about 5 days. It was mild. I mean, I'm not going to say it wasn't anything. I didn't feel very good. And a lot of the congestion I did not have as deep as some have, so that was good for me. But at the same time, I woke up one morning and had this burning sensation in my left shoulder blade. And I have a cervical disc problem, apparently. I'll have an MRI done probably tomorrow to see what's going on. I had a C6 bone fusion about 25 years ago, and so I certainly hope that that's not the case. But I've been on some pretty severe pain meds and just trying to deal with the inflammation and that sort of thing. The only thing I did get done was I did prepare for field day and had put a new rig structure together and things like that, and my team was all ready to go. And then when I tested positive, they just decided to punt. So a couple of them just went to other sites and did field day there. So other than that, and doing a little work with the Radio Amateurs of Canada on a survey that they're doing, one in English and one in French, I might add, and helping them with that. That's about all of the amateur radio that I've been up to the last couple of weeks.
Well, I'm glad you're recovering, Frank, and you do sound as though you've been doing quite a lot as well. So that's good news. Now, Leslie, what have you been up to?
Well, first of all, I'm very glad to hear that Frank's recovering. I'm very glad to hear that indeed. Anyway, what have I been doing? Well, we finally got that antenna. It's a broadband HF dipole that we've been trying to get up in the air and fix in position for a couple of months now. And we had to get some special brackets made because the ones on the markets were too small and all sorts of shenanigans. But we finally got this thing up in the air. It works well on 7 megs and on 14 megs and above. Not great on 80 meters, but yeah, I'm glad we've finally got the Silverthorne Radio Club back on the air again, doing what it should be in a radio club. So rather than the kit just stuck in the corner. So that's one of the things we've been working on, and it's sort of been taking up quite a bit of spare time, but it's all done now. Hopefully we can try and improve upon it, get something up for 80 meters, I think is the next step. So that's what we've been doing this end, Martin.
Yeah, it sounds good. And pleased you have managed to get that done, mate, because that will give you more fun down the club.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Martin, what have you been up to?
Oh, probably not that much, actually. I mentioned before, I think I found an old radio. I was up in my parents' loft, just clearing a load of stuff out, and I found an old radio, and I'll be honest, it was a CB in a box that I'd completely forgotten about. But I remember that it didn't work. It powered on, you hear squelch, but it didn't transmit, and I wanted to get it fixed, but I couldn't really find anywhere that was willing to touch it. You know, the modern shops, and okay, perhaps I didn't call the ones that, you know, the right ones, but the shops I spoke to were like, yeah, we just like send it back to, you know, whichever company now. If it's a new radio, we'll send it back, but we don't really want to touch the old stuff. Okay, they weren't really interested, and I wanted to get it fixed. And I found this guy on Facebook, and if people have found him, it's known as The Shack, a guy called James, based down in Cornwall. And I reached out to him and said, hey, you know, I've got this radio, this is the problem with it, any chance you can help me out? And he came straight back to me, yeah, absolutely, love to help you get the radio back on the air. Here's my details, here's my address, this is, you know, how we deal with this. Like, yeah, no problem. sent it down to him. He gave me an ETA on how long it would take, because I think he's a one-man band, and he's sort of, what is it they say, he's under-promised and over-delivered. So the radio is, he contacted me today saying the radio's on the way back. Very excited about that, getting that back on the air and reminiscing about my younger radio years on the air, if there's someone left to talk to. But either way, I'm happy because I've got my radio coming back that will work. Also been rerunning some cables. As I said, I had to move my shack, so I've been rerunning some of the cables again, and making some brackets so I can actually mount the radios properly around the desk, rather than having them sort of balanced precariously, which will be nice. A little bit of the talk group. I've been popped up a few times, not as much as I have been, just because I've been working. But the only other radio-related thing today, my wife says you can spot an antenna a mile off. It's amazing, because in the car park, we went to a major theme park today. I took my daughter there, and in the car park, of course, I can spot my car because it's got a big aerial on the top, which does play to its advantage. But I also spotted some stupidly expensive Sennheiser wireless radio microphone antennas mounted on roofs of various different buildings, and they weren't seemingly pointing at any stage or any performance area. So I presumed they were for picking up, or perhaps in one case transmitting, the music that gets blasted out around the park. Admittedly, if I was doing an install like that, I'd have probably chosen a much cheaper, much more efficient antenna for that location, but hey, it's their money. But yeah, it was quite interesting just walking around looking at this stuff. So yeah, that's my month in radio.
Well, that sounds like you have had some fun. I have worked you a couple of times on the talk group. In fairness, I would have looked at your radio for you, but I'm glad you didn't send it to me in the nicest possible way. I would have done it for you, but I am pretty much maxed out at the moment.
You've got too much on. I wouldn't dream it. If it was a really thing, I might run it by you. And if you're going to say, "Oh yeah, that's just replace this component or replace that," then yeah. But this guy, he runs a business doing this. Yeah, so, I'd reach out to the guy. I know you would have done it, but you've got enough on. You do enough to help me out. So, yeah, it's all good.
Right. So, I'm glad you got it fixed. Chris, I left you to last because you've probably done more than all of us. So, do you want to tell us what you've been up to?
Yeah. How long have you got? So, I should explain that I'm currently on a 6-week holiday from work, where I work. If you get there for 20 years, they give you a 6-week holiday. So I've been there 23 years, so I'm now on my 6-week break. So I decided to set myself a little challenge, which was to work or to activate the summits of the highest mountain in England, Scotland and Wales. So I've already activated Snowdon, which is the highest mountain in Wales, and I've also activated Scafell Pike, which is the highest mountain in England. And I will shortly be travelling to Scotland to activate Ben Nevis, which is the highest mountain in Scotland and also the highest mountain in the whole of the UK. So that's my little challenge. Doing lots of driving. In amongst all of that, I've also been to Friedrichshafen as well, and you'll hear about that no doubt later in the feature. So yeah, I've driven so far about 2,500 miles in my camper van this month, which is. A lot of that was driving to and from Germany for the event, because I went out in the camper van. Talking of which, so I actually camped at the event. There's a campsite actually out Friedrichshafen. It says campsite. It's a bit like a car park that's kind of been converted into a campsite. And Bill mentioned that he'd worked GB70E. Well, I also worked GB70E from my KX3 from the car park in Germany. So not quite as far as from Pennsylvania, but. Still managed to work them on I think actually running 15 watts from my KX3, so that was quite nice, just on a link dipole. So, yeah, doing a huge amount of driving. I've been on the talk group, been chatting to a few folks while driving through Europe and through the UK. You'll have heard that I've been to Friedrichshafen. I won't talk about that too much because that's the feature for this, and I think also the next episode. So there's lots of interviews. We spoke to lots and lots of people, not just people we spoke to in the past, but some new people as well. So you'll hear hopefully some interesting things from the things we've got over there. Lots of things really. So today I've just been testing my equipment so back onto the SOTA stuff. So Snowdon and Scaffold Park, I managed to activate actually quite easily, and I may actually do a talk. I might actually do a feature on this, so I won't talk too much. But basically, those two I managed to activate on just on a 2 meter handheld, and it was the first time I've ever actually had a pile up on a 2 meter FM handheld. So that was quite fun. Ben Nevis is a bit more remote, so I'm actually going to take up with me my HF gear. So I'm going to take the KX3 and a pole and a linked dipole, etc., and battery. So today I was just testing to make sure that's all working okay. I did actually tweak my linked dipole because the 40 meter configuration wasn't quite right. Now it's absolutely spot on. So I think 40 might be my best band to use. So 20 and 40 are now spot on that aerial. So hopefully over the next few days when I get up to Scotland, I'll be able to get up Ben Nevis if the weather's okay and activate that one as well. So that'll be good. Talking of sort of activations, I also, when I was out in Germany, and you'll hear that Ed Durant, I was out with him, and obviously Ed lives in Germany anyway, and Ed's a huge SOTA operator, and as you know, he's a mountain goat. We actually went and operated a sort of summit while we were there as well, so I got another 8 points while I was in Germany, which is quite nice. Lots of other stuff I could talk about. We'd also, and Martin and Leslie and Frank and a few others, we were on a Zoom call with I think they called the Ham Radio Network, Martin, the other night. So we were doing a bit of a chat about the podcast, which was quite nice. Went on for quite a while with lots of questions, and we sort of talked a lot about what we go to. So that was good as well. So that's pretty much it. There's probably other things as well I could talk about, but it'll be here all night otherwise. But yeah, that's pretty much what I've been up to the last month or so.
Yeah, well, you've been busy, Chris, and yeah, I think we've all been pretty busy. I'm probably not as much as most of you. I've been helping a couple of our new foundation license holders with their code plugs for their radio. They both got two different type radios and two that I'd never seen before. So I've been trying to help them with that, and hopefully we'll get something working and they'll have a much better understanding. Last Sunday, while you were in Friedrichshafen, Chris, I was at the Newbury Rally in Berkshire. I was surprised just how big and how many people were there. It certainly was busy. So, yeah, that was pretty good. Yes, we did an evening with Andy from Ham Radio Network. He said, can the ICQ presenters come along and just answer questions? Well, I think due to the fact that most people are probably coming back from Friedrichshafen or had just finished field day in the States, we didn't get as many people online with us. There were probably more orange shirts than there were people who turned up, but it will go out on YouTube. And I think it was a great evening. We enjoyed ourselves. We had a good laugh. And yeah, the people there thoroughly enjoyed it. A couple of weeks ago, just after I recorded the last podcast, I did the Sutton and Cheam network meeting and with Teams. And quite honestly, although I got away with it, in fairness, I'd never used Teams to do that sort of thing. And in fairness, I don't think I ever actually got it to work much before about 24 hours before I got the basics working. And then the guest speaker turned up and he'd never used it and I'd never done what was what. But it all came off, so that was good. A week ago was Mrs. B's birthday, so that effectively stopped me playing radio that day. Not that she'd have moaned too much about it, but I just thought it's her birthday, I should spend some time with her. Been doing a fair amount of documentation as on the things I've been doing. So I've been trying to keep my documentation up to date. And I did build a 2-meter Moxon the other day. Unfortunately, I've got to tune it because it's a bit long at the moment because it's a bit low in frequency. So I need to fiddle with that a bit and get that working. Done a fair bit on the talk group, talking to Chris and some of the others from around the world, which has been fun, and some new people on the talk group, which was good. But last but not least, Andy from the Ham Radio Network has got a special event going on, and I'll do more about this next episode, but he has an event down in Ashford in Kent on a windmill site, and it's a free FREE for anybody in the southeast of England. Tables are free, entrance is free, everything is free. And all Andy says is, look, guys, please, we get the field for free, but there is an on-site cafe come restaurant, cafe come whatever. He said, please don't bring your own food with you. Buy it from there. So what you don't spend on entrance fee, just buy something in the cafe, and that allows us to have a grand day out, which is what it will be. So effectively, that's what I've been up to. We've all been pretty busy, and I think it's worked quite well for us. So with that in mind, all I can say now is I'm going to say 73s to all of you guys, and I'll thank you as well. I'd like to thank Mr. Chris Howard, M0TCH.
Thanks, Martin. Another fun episode. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I'd like to thank Mr. Martin Rothwell, M0SGL.
Been fun. See you next time.
Yeah. I'd also like to thank Mr. Frank Howell, K4FMH.
Always a pleasure, Martin. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, great. And Bill made it eventually, which was good news. We would have missed you, Bill. Mr. Bill Barnes, WC3B. Who's actually had to leave as well, but nice Bill got in. He's having the one of these horrible days at work where nothing's going right. But last but not least, Leslie Butterfield, G0CIB.
Thanks for having me on, Martin. It was always great fun.
Yeah, great fun, mate, as well. Okay, I'll say 73s, guys, and we'll do it all again soon.
Cheerio.
73.
73.
Keep your amateur ham radio podcast advert free by donating less than a length of coax. Visit www.icqpodcast.com/donate now. For all the news, links and information, visit www.icqpodcast.com.
And now it's time to have a look at the news in brief from me, Colin M6BOY. We start off with news in Switzerland, where there's an updated list for the Swiss voice repeaters is available to be downloaded. The list was created on the basis of reports to Ofcom, and I say it has information as well from the US KA frequency coordinator that has pulled together any additions and corrections along the way. So there's a link to the webpage with this information in there, and so you can update your repeaters, etc. for Switzerland if you're heading that way this summer maybe, or if as I say, you wish to obviously communicate with somebody in that part of the world. So as always, all the links and information is on icqpodcast.com. Now, started this weekend, the 13 Colonies special events stations. They're going to be running for another week, and operators are based on each original 13 US colonies and a bonus station in England, Pennsylvania and France. The event honours the original 13 colonies that fought for American independence and honours military veterans and those still active in the service. It's the 14th annual event of this, and as I say, this year's event is dedicated to Tom Francis, Whiskey 1 Tango Echo Foxtrot, who serves as the state manager for South Carolina, which is using the special event call sign Kilo 2 Lima. Unfortunately, Tom became a silent key last March. More details are available at 13colonies.us. And we finish off our news roundtable with the opportunity to get involved in the UK with the RSGB. They have regional vacancies in Area 11, Region 11, which covers Cornwall, Devon, Dorset, Somerset, South Gloucestershire and the Channel Islands. And also looking for 13 regional representatives covering the whole of the UK, which means they must reside in their actual region. So there's plenty of opportunities to get involved if you wish to help out the RSGB. So to get involved, you need to contact David, Mike 0, Mike Bravo Delta, and he can be contacted at rr12@rsgb.org.uk. Right, now we're going to head up to our features episode, and our feature is with Chris Howard, Mike Zero, Tango Charlie Hotel, and Ed Durant, DD5 Lima Papa, as they start to review the Friedrichshafen 2022 show. As always, hope you enjoy.
And now, what you've all been waiting for, this episode's feature from the ICQ podcast.
Okay, we're here with Petra Ratgeber, who is the project manager for ham radio at Messe Friedrichshafen. And we've talked to Petra previous times when we've been here, and I wanted to ask her how it's been in the meantime with COVID and with all the other problems. How was it at the Messe?
Yeah, for the Messe it was quite hard time. We had 2 years, nearly no fairs here going on. Mm-hmm. So we are really pleased that we can help the ham radio this year. So we have a lot of exhibitors and the visitors are coming and everybody's happy, I guess. So if I talk to the exhibitors and visitors, they are all smiling.
Yeah, this is what we're finding as well, that they're saying, yeah, thankfully things are starting to get back to normal. I mean, none of us expect the big numbers that we had back in 2019 and obviously before that as well. But in the opening speech, it was, I think the number quoted was, the hope is that maybe 10,000 people come through. And if I'm not wrong, it was about 17,000 in 2019, I believe. So there is a lot less people here, but in the situation we have, I think it's good news.
Yes, we had 13,000 attendees.
13 was it only?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, actually.
So it's not.
So it's not so
not
bad
such a big
if we are
drop, yeah.
talking about 10,000. So that's I think a good number of visitors. If you know the COVID is still we have the war, and from Asia you won't get equipment shipped over to Europe. So I think that's a good.
I think that reflects somewhat in some of the larger manufacturers not being here this year. Namely Kenwood and Yaesu, but the dealers are here, which is the main thing. And from a Messe point of view, how big is the ham radio compared to the other events that you put on during the year? I guess it's one of the smaller ones.
It depends how you count it. It's maybe a smaller one because we have only like 3 or 4 halls which we are using. Mm-hmm. But if you see the total amount of exhibitors from the flea market and exhibitors and the associations, so it's a good size, and they are all come from all over the world, so that's also special for the ham radio. So other fairs are more local, maybe, or they have European visitors, and this one is really unique because they're coming from all over the world. Yeah,
and when do you actually start the planning for a ham radio?
We start actually in November. We will send out the application forms, and then we talk to the exhibitors, and we start our website and a newsletter and stuff like this. And then in January we have the early bird discount which ends. And from that time we fix everything, the stands and the supporting program will come from DRAC. That's really good. So we have just to keep everything together, but they will bring us the people. They have the speeches and the lectures, and it's going on.
So it's about 8 months before that you have to start to be ready for this. And do you happen to know how many years ham radio has been actually at Messe?
Yes, it's the 45th time, actually.
So 45 years here.
Yes,
and the Messe doesn't look that old.
Yeah.
Seriously.
The Messe is 22 years old now.
Okay,
this fairground, we have the old one. And it was before the 71st Bodensee-Treffen, they call it. So it's Lake Constance meeting.
Lake Constance meeting.
And so it's one of the oldest fairs here at Messe Friedrichshafen.
Okay, good. And you're obviously looking forward to next year already.
Sure, we are looking forward to being next year here again, and we hope the exhibitor, they couldn't show up this year, they will be here next year.
I'm sure
and as well the visitors who couldn't afford maybe, or it was of COVID or whatever, they couldn't come, so they will be here.
And for the listeners, just to tell you the power of this this lady, yesterday I complained about the weather, and today we've got beautiful, sunny, hot weather, and it's practical at Messe Friedrichshafen because everything's inside anyway, so you're not worried about the rain. But it's a beautiful day here, and really, as the motto says, a reunion of old friends, and that really goes not just for the amateurs, but also I think for the amateurs and the organisers from both Messe Friedrichshafen and DARC. So I personally would like to say thank you for the great work that you do.
Thank you as well. Yeah, and reunion with friends, that's the best motto we had, I guess, especially in these times.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hopefully we'll talk to you in a year's time again.
Sure, we will be here next year.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
We're here at Friedrichshafen in Germany, for Ham Radio 2022, and I'm joined by the president of the IARU Region 1, which is Sylvain, Foxtrot 4, Golf Kilo Romeo.
Hello.
Hello. And I'm also joined by Mats, SM6EAN, and he's the secretary for the IARU Region 1. Hi, Mats.
Yes, hello.
Hi. So, Sylvain, can you just explain to not everyone will really know what the IARU is and what your role is in the world. So what can you perhaps give us a bit of background as to what the IARU stands for and what your role is?
So, yes, IARU is the International Amateur Radio Union, and it's an organization that was founded in 1925, representing the amateur radio services, I should say. Services meaning also the amateur satellite service. And our goal is to organize, defend, and protect the spectrum we enjoy, to make it very short and simple. Okay. And we're organized in 3 regions. That's the same regions than the ITU, the Region 1.
Yeah.
So I'm the president, as you mentioned, of Region 1. Region 1 is Europe, Eastern Europe, and Africa. Region 2 is the Americas, let's say North and South America. And Region 3 is Asia and Pacific. That exactly matches the structure of the ITU.
Now, in terms of this event in Friedrichshafen, this is not just about meeting members and meeting people and chatting. This is actually quite a serious thing. I believe there are lots of meetings happen here.
Yes.
Between the different national societies and others. Is that right?
Yes. For us, it's very important to be here because it's a very good occasion to meet our members, because the members of IARU are national organizations, are national societies. For example, in the UK, the RSGB is a member of IARU. So that's the good place to be, to meet people and to meet the boards and the key players in each of these societies. That's why we're here, and it's a good way to explain what we're doing. It's a good way to see people and get feedback from the amateur community on the hot topics, I would say, or their concerns.
Sure. Are there any hot topics? Perhaps Mats can. Are there any hot topics at the moment?
Yes, there is. Frequencies is always a hot topic.
Sure.
I would say that noise on our amateur bands on the radio frequencies is a continuous hot topic, and it has to be handled long term. But when it comes to spectrum, it's of course the WRC, the World Radio Conference, that comes every 3 years. That is the focus, and actually we are already now starting to work on the 2027 conference. So you can imagine that the one that's coming up now, we've been working with it for quite a long time, and there is a serious topic around the 23 centimeter amateur band. So we are spending a lot of effort and money on working with that question.
Sounds very interesting. Is that something that, I mean, obviously you guys are representing the amateur radio hobby, and we've got the national societies that are doing their work and I guess lobbying the regulators, I suppose, in terms of getting access to bands and protecting access to bands, I suppose. Is that I guess that's an important part of your role, I suppose. Is that right?
Very much, and of course IARU takes on the role of things that goes worldwide.
Sure.
It's very difficult for a national organization to work in for instance, ITU. So IARU has the status of an observer in there, not as a voting member. It can only be the national organizations that can do that. But with good preparations, a lot of work around that, it is possible to discuss with the different national organizations and regional organizations, which is also very important. It's quite a structure that you have to work in, and one of the difficult part is that you have to be part of that structure to be able to influence. It is very difficult just to come from the side and say, hey guys, here we are, we like this to be our view, and we hope you can respect that. Nobody will listen to you. You have to be part of how the work is done, and that is why IRU is structured in the 3 regions, just like ITU.
So very much a diplomatic role, very much influencing.
Not only influencing, also taking an active part. Typically, even if we have an observer status, where our contributions are welcome. So it means that in some cases, like in CPT or like in ITU, we bring studies, we bring inputs to the voting members, and these are discussed. At the end, we cannot vote, but we can advocate, we can influence the others, and our job is to be as serious as possible, to be respected, so that when we say that we feel that a new proposition can be harmful for us, our voice is heard.
Sure.
It's not because we heard that we win. It's not that easy, of course, because we are using free spectrum. We're using spectrum. Free. That we don't pay, like where others pay for the spectrum. So we never have to forget this. So it means that we have to be much more efficient and much more have very strong arguments.
Now, Tim Ellam did the keynote speech this morning at the conference, at the events. He's the global president for the IRU.
Yes, exactly. He's the president for IRU. Yes.
President, sorry. And he mentioned a few things around new technology and embracing things and the future of amateur radio. We have to adapt and we have to evolve and adapt to keep the hobby fresh and keep things going. What sorts of things, we mentioned FT8, and what sorts of things do you suggest?
Well, basically, the thing is that we have a age problem in amateur radio. If you look around us today, you will see many white-haired people. And that's true. We cannot, we have to be realistic. So when he did his speech this morning, he in fact wanted to stress the fact that newcomers, youngers, might be looking for something different than we others are enjoying from amateur radio. And while it was quite easy, I would say, to have a house with an antenna, years ago, young people are not living in a private property. They're living in small places most of the time. Because they're not working or they just start working, so they cannot afford yet a house. So it means that they have no space. So we have to be open to practices that are more digital, that involve less power and so on.
No space for a huge HF tower.
Exactly. That's the example he made this morning. He took this morning was to say that someone could run FT8, make QSO, have fun using FT8 from an indoor antenna. And of course, we see a lot of controversies using digital modes or FT8.
Sure. Not everyone always agrees, unfortunately, in any hobby, I suppose. But but no, I thought it was actually really quite an inspiring speech. And I think he's really got his finger on the pulse in terms of where we are and what we need to be doing going forward. So I thought it was a very interesting and inspiring speech there. It sounds like the IARU are very much working very hard behind the scenes, and maybe not that. The average amateur is probably not going to think much about not going to be thinking much about the IARU, just taking for granted the fact we've got this spectrum and the fact that you guys are actually really behind the scenes working very hard. So
we try to, yes.
so you mentioned the ITU actually. Just let us know what the ITU, what that organisation's about, because you mentioned you do talk to them.
I'm not sure I explained. I understood what you're asking me. Sorry.
So you mentioned the ITU earlier. So what's their role in the spectrum?
Basically, the spectrum is organised, even if it's an intangible resource, it means that it has to be regulated.
Sure.
So just to take a stupid, simple example, you're using an FM receiver, and in many countries, you use almost the same frequency range from 88 to 108 megahertz. Someone decided this. Someone made this in a way that the receiver made in Eastern countries, work in Western countries, and so on. That's the role of ITU. Defining the bands, defining the use cases, defining the modes, and so on. And this is a non-profit worldwide organization where all the countries decide together how they use the spectrum.
Okay.
And this organization meets every 4 years, and all the countries have vote. In fact, it's changing. Just a quick background on this. Years ago, each country had a voice, and now we're seeing more regional organizations. For example, in Europe, you have the CEPT, which is something we call the regional telecommunication organizations. So countries are grouping themselves and to have more power.
Got it, I see, okay. And of course each one has got its own regulators, got Ofcom in the UK and FCC in the US, etc. Okay. That's it, yeah. So they all kind of, I guess, sit on the ITU, essentially.
Exactly. So they have the right to vote, and the IIU cannot vote.
Sure.
Because we're not a member, we're not state.
Yeah.
But we're recognized as an observer. It means that, as I explained previously, we can, as long as we're seriously respecting the rules and that we play a positive role, we can push papers, we can push recommendations and discuss with the others on an equal base, as long as we don't vote.
Okay. And that's been really interesting, and I'm sure our listeners will find that very useful. So thank you very much, Sylvain. Wish you all the best for the show here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm joined by Oliver Amend, Delta Golf 6 Bravo Charlie Echo, and Oliver is the chairman for ARIS in Europe. ARIS is amateur radio on the ISS. So welcome, Oliver.
Yeah, good morning. Welcome.
And thank you for taking some time to talk to us today.
Yeah, pleasure.
So you've got the stand here at Friedrichshafen, and you're talking about amateur radio on the International Space Station. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit about what you get up to.
Yeah, the International Space Station is circling around the Earth, and since 2000 we installed equipment on the station, and we are able to connect students in schools and offer them possibilities to connect directly to astronauts. That means children have the possibility to speak with equipment which is provided by ARIS with the astronauts live in space.
Fantastic. That must be very exciting and very inspiring for children to be able to talk to somebody in space.
Yes, it is a support for the STEM activities in school, and we want to raise the interest in techniques. And at least we are radio amateurs, and we want to also raise the interest in amateur radio techniques, getting license courses, getting the person's license. And later on, after they are getting in studies and professionals, that they are getting engineers.
What a fantastic introduction to the technical hobby.
Yes, it is STEM activities, and I like more the STEAM activities because it's arts also then in, because we are international. Yeah. And we have a lot of, when we are looking to Europe, for example, we have a lot of languages. That means it even applies the lessons or the courses, the study possibilities to translate our English documentation into the national languages.
So you're covering many subjects, not just sort of science-based subjects.
Yes, and we are absolutely glad to see that it is not only the techniques to have this contact, but the schools are organizing a lot of things around, like exhibitions or they really arts. They are doing paintings, no? Paint your alien yourself, no?
Well, I can imagine for a school it's a big event. To talk to the space station must be a huge event and have, like you say, lots of interest. Lots of different things they can get involved with, absolutely, not just the actual technical chatting to the astronauts.
Yeah, first you get to motivate the teachers that they have to do this in plus to their normal work. But if this is embedded in an activity, it is later on something which is also for the school and the town where it happens. It is really a big event.
Yeah, it must also it must be great publicity for the school and to really, highlight their or raise their profile, I suppose. Yeah.
But it's also an opportunity for the local radio amateurs to present their skill.
Absolutely.
And when we are looking to these experiments that we are providing, there are telematic programs like balloon projects, free sounding balloons, or if we are looking to these opportunities with QO100 from AMSAT, it is something where it doesn't end with the orbit of the ISS. There's a beginning, maybe.
No, it sounds like a fantastic introduction to many things, including amateur radio, so it's very exciting. You mentioned about the technology involved, so you mentioned, we were chatting earlier before we started to record about sometimes the school makes a direct contact with the space station, sometimes they go through a telebridge. Perhaps you can explain a little bit about the telebridge technology.
Yeah, you must imagine the ISS is circling and we are not Superman. We cannot stop it. We cannot get it fixed on the sky. And this is a problem that we have 3 weeks at about where the ISS passes in the daytimes directly. But we have 3 weeks also where it is on the opposite side of the Earth within daytime or local daytime here in Europe, for example. And there we are serving ourselves with telebridges. Telebridges are well-equipped and well-trained stations, which are RS members, participants. And they are distributed worldwide. We have some in the United States. We have in Argentina. We have 3 stations, for example, also in Australia, and 1 station down in South Africa, in Johannesburg. That means this offers us the possibility to provide, even if I have a fixed event, like the ham radio here in Friedrichshafen. We did some years ago a contact, and you know by yourself, it has to happen at 11 o'clock.
Yes,
but the ISS passes over only.
So it gives you more flexibility to be able to schedule the contact.
Yes. In case of need, we can do it. But a direct, to be honest, is the crown. It's the cherry on the cake, because this is really something which is the best.
Sure. And do you involve local amateurs, or do you have volunteers that help?
Yes, this is done by the school, but it is supported by local amateurs. So we don't have members. We are an association, but we are a working group. We are not an association, so we are not a legal entity. But this working group consists of a lot of contacts. We have a lot of contacts, and we involve local radio amateurs. So if you make an application, the school applies, but on the application you have also to say, this is the teacher doing that activity, this is the curriculum that they want to do, but they have also to say, and this is the technical part. That means these are the local radio amateurs supporting the event.
So they're sort of sponsoring the event. So I guess for a school to contact you and to actually arrange a contact, I guess there's an application process they need to follow, I guess?
Yes, there is an application process, because we only have in Europe 8 to 10 contacts possible per half year.
Okay.
And when looking to the applications, we see that we receive per half year 20 to 30 application requests. And then we have, unfortunately, to do a selection process. And this selection process has to end then at about 8 to 9 contacts. We should keep one a little bit weak. That means it depends also of the astronauts available on the station.
Sure.
Because we need licensed astronauts.
Okay.
And they need to be trained on our radio on station. An astronaut is not allowed to use equipment on station without having a training.
Got you.
So this is also a background process that we have to ensure.
Okay.
And we are very happy that the astronauts are signing in, and that they are also willing to support these experiments.
Sure, because I guess you need their help to be able to make this work.
Without the astronauts, we would not be able.
Sure. You mentioned about the space station then. So what radio equipment do we have on the International Space Station to support this?
We are very proud that we have a very good cooperation with Kenwood. Kenwood radios are on board, and nowadays we have a Kenwood D710 Golf Alpha, which is used upstairs, upstairs on the station.
On the station, yeah.
And it is with a specialized firmware. So the astronauts are not obliged to enter frequencies; they select channels.
Okay.
So we use the memory to fix program channel settings, and therefore we have the Kenwood radio inside of the Columbus module, which has been mounted there 2 years ago. Installed 2 years ago. We have a multi-voltage power supply, because the power plugs in Columbus are very, very rare.
Oh.
Persons are glad if we only use one power line, and
I see.
But we have a multi-power supply. That means we can derive the powers. And the funny situation is the station is equipped with 120 volts or 28 volts, but this does not fit to our radio amateur equipment. 12 volt also is not that good. 30.8 is provided by our power supply. So we have a lot of jokes.
So you have to adapt your equipment to fit into that environment.
Yes. But this is one part. The other part is that at the beginning of Columbus also, and later on, we had the chance to install 2 LS band antennas on the nadir side. The nadir side is the side pointing towards Earth. We use them for high frequency transmissions, like, for example, video transmissions, DVB-S. And we have a stick antenna outside, which offers us the capability for 2 meters and 70 centimeters. So this is the antenna which is also pointing toward Earth, which is used for the school context.
And I can imagine getting equipment approved to go up into space is quite a process. Like, it's not just a case of sending a box and saying, can we take that? I guess there's a lot of testing required, etc., is there?
Absolutely. And this is an experience that this group already has since decades of years. The persons who are involved in this project have been specialists and working in the space environment, but it was also an international partnership already on the time of the shuttle launches.
Okay.
So the activity started with Owen Garriott and STS-9, one of the first shuttle launches, where he used a Motorola handheld and an antenna being placed from the inside of the cabin to the window when they were circling, and he did the first QSOs from space, doing that with an internal antenna on the window.
So very simple setup.
It's very simple, but the persons who are involved in this project are still supporting. And yes, it is. We have to follow NASA procedures, recommendations that we have to fulfill. And we have a lot of persons, or some persons, working in the space business, being with the knowledge of the integration and manufacturing of these parts.
Sure. Now, we mentioned schools. There are other activities as well that RS get involved with the space station. I think slow scan TV is another big area that you get involved with.
Yes, it was an activity that we started some years ago, restarted again. And what we are doing is that we provide 10 to 12 slides, which will be prepared and will be transmitted. And nowadays, with the use of SDR radio as a receiver possibility, which is absolutely cheap, because these dongles are only for 10, 15 euros, for example. This is a capability, even with a stick antenna, to receive something. And we are overwhelmed by the responses.
Sure.
RS is providing later on, when we receive the responses from the persons, we are providing also the awards for this.
Okay.
And we have thousands of requests for these awards, and I'm absolutely glad that we have our Polish RS team creating every time also a new award and submitting it. But to express it a little bit, there is only one award existing, which is an authorized award. It is the RS award, and we have a lot of awards which have been provided by others who are absolutely not related to RS, but it is the normal situation. If something is good, others are copying it, and the awards are good, and so we have a lot of award copies in world.
But you mentioned it's very popular, the slow scan. I mean, I've done it myself a number of times. The slow scan, it's a really easy way for amateurs to get involved and demonstrate maybe the capabilities of our hobby. And let's face it, as you're a kid and this came from space, how exciting is that? So it's a fantastic opportunity to kind of get involved and to see in a reality of space technology, etc. So that's
and
that's
you don't
fantastic.
need a big equipment.
No, exactly. I mean, a handheld or some very.
You can even do it with Web SDR. You can. That means you can, even if you have no equipment, you can branch into the Web SDR of another town, looking to the passes, then listening in and get it demodulated from your loudspeaker.
Sure. Now, I have heard of amateurs talking to the space station, but I guess that's a fairly rare event. Obviously, I know the school contacts are scheduled and it happens, but I'm guessing it's occasionally amateurs may go on the radio just ad hoc. Does that ever happen?
No, the contacts are scheduled, and we have at about each week one contact if it's normal, but we are not normal. And within the Axiom 1 flight, we had, for example, 6 contacts with Axiom within 1 week, plus several others which have been normally scheduled. But these SSCB events, for example, are also something which is really a possibility to listen in for a longer time because it is a 2-3 days activity.
Yeah.
And the QSO with a station is only within exactly 10 to 15 minutes, so it is a one-shot activity. But at the moment, there is another opportunity because the ISS, the radio that we have on board currently, is in transponder mode.
Okay.
That means on the downlink of 437.800, you can listen in the transponder. And if you hear that the transponder is available, which should be the case, you can call up in 2 meters. Frequencies are on our website.
Yeah.
And don't be shy if anyone ISS calls directly back, because we have the brilliant situation that Kjell Lindgren, as astronaut, is using the radio for unscheduled activities.
Yes.
He's doing it in his free time. Instead of cleaning up the station, he may use the radio.
Like a hobby thing while he's up there. And that would be amazing to speak to an astronaut.
It is an opportunity to do it. And looking to the responses on Twitter, he did it also within lunchtime.
Okay.
And also in the evening time. Okay. So it is an opportunity to listen in and to have your own QSO with ISS unscheduled.
Fantastic. Now, for the scheduled contacts, if we have any teachers listening to the podcast, how would they get in touch with you to go through the application process? Is there a website to go to, or?
Yeah, the best way is to go to the website. It is www.aris-europe.eu.org.
Okay.
But take one of the search machines and look for ARIS and Europe. And then there is a section which is called School Contacts. And in that section you find all the information for the application. It is an application instruction book which is listed there. And then you have to provide the application.
Sure. Fantastic.
And if our common language is English, but if this is a school in an area, for example, in an area which is not so keen to speak English, please don't be shy.
Sure.
Send your request, and we have mentors with a lot of language capabilities.
Okay, fantastic. Oliver, is there any final thoughts? Or
Yeah, the final thought is everything what we are doing is done by volunteers.
Sure.
That means we are not a paid association. We are not a paid association by ESA, NASA or someone else. We are not an industrial. We are not an association in that sense that we have members who are paying for us. If donations are possible, that would be great, because everything what we are doing is volunteer work and financed only by donations. Therefore, we have also a donation site, and thanks for the possibility to mention that. Yes, we are financed by donations.
And I'm guessing they can go to the same website and they can donate.
Yes.
There. Fantastic. Oliver, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
I hope you had a great time here at the show, and wish you every success for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, hi everybody, we're here at the RSGB stall in Friedrichshafen, and we've managed to gather up Steve Thomas, M1ACB, the General Manager of RSGB, and with him we have Murray Nyman, G6JYB, who is the RSGB Spectrum Forum Chair. And they've both got some interesting information from us, so let's pass it straight to Steve to give us a bit of an introduction of what we're talking about.
Okay, well, first of all, it's great to be back here at Friedrichshafen. I think we can all agree on that. It's been a few years, hasn't it? A couple of years off. So it's fantastic to be back here. And having the team here, meeting everybody again is brilliant. And seeing you guys here again is fantastic. I love the orange shirts. We can spot you from a distance. But we've been, a few of us have been here for a couple of days now. So Murray, myself and our president, Stuart Bryant, we've been here for IARU meetings. And really, the work of the RSGB is much more than the membership, of course, is immensely important to us, and the sales, but people sometimes don't appreciate the international work and the spectrum work that goes on behind the scenes. So it's great that Murray's sitting here to talk to you and can tell you a bit more about that. But we've been with the IARU in interim meetings, as they're called. Murray will explain them much better than me, I'm sure. But we've been looking at spectrum defence and EMC issues, etc. And I think it's really important that people appreciate that work goes on, and the income that we have from membership and sales and things like that funds these activities. That's for the good of all radio amateurs in the UK. So over to Murray.
Well, thank you, Steve. Yeah, so prior to Friedrichshafen's main show event here, which hasn't obviously happened for a few years, IARU meetings have also been impacted by the pandemic. So this was the first opportunity to have what's called an interim meeting. We have a 3-year meeting cycle, and between the big general conferences, we would normally classically meet in Vienna. Here we've used Friedrichshafen as a convenient opportunity. And the interim meeting has 3 strands: HF matters, VHF and above matters, which we'll come back to in a moment, and also EMC matters, where there was a lot of detail on things like noise floor measurements, for example. And the meetings have been run in a hybrid format here, so some member societies have managed to bring their reps to physically be here. And we've also used the hybrid opportunities. So we also had experts back in the UK joining us online, as well as the three of us as well. So that was how we handle multiple things, but still get the skills to bear. On the top headline is probably going to be the 23 centimetre band. So the VHF committee, which is called C5 here, was briefed by one of my colleagues and who's the lead on this topic, Barry G4SJH. He is RSGB microwave manager, but because of his expertise, he's also become the IARU International Lead and Coordinator for the 26 challenges we certainly face in the 23 centimetre band. Those challenges arose going back many years ago when Galileo, the European satellite navigation system, started to come into the band, and whilst like normal GPS it uses frequencies outside the amateur bands, unfortunately for us as a secondary service, Galileo has got a new primary service that overlaps our part of the band, which is where traditionally some of the en route radars are as well. It's seeking a protection level that's very demanding, I think it's fair to say. And even though there's only been literally 2 or 3 incidents that were quickly corrected over the period of several years, nonetheless the Commission forced through a World Radio Conference agenda item, which will look at how their receivers are protected. Officially, amateurs should not lose the allocation, but of course that could still result in such strong restrictions on power or other parameters that it will have an impact without a doubt.
So in short, we're saying that it may become a situation where we're sharing the band, but we're the secondary user, so we cannot operate if there's a chance of any interference. Is that what they're trying to do?
Well, any secondary use, the amateur license schedule is full of secondary allocations.
Yes,
we're used to those. What is new about this time is that the primary user isn't a strong signal. It is a very weak signal with a very wide band receiver, and that makes it, unfortunately, very sensitive to our cells, particularly with wideband signals, less so for narrowband signals.
So sensitive but not selective. So it picks up anything nearby.
It is you could say it's the classic EMC nightmare.
Yep.
It's looking for a very weak signal that needs 40 megahertz worth of spectrum. And of course that's bound to, as well as looking at the standard GPS bands as well. So the receiver is even wider than you think.
Okay. And are we making progress on that? What's the result of the meetings?
So we're now at a stage in the cycle where we've gone from the administrations and regulators trying to understand what amateurs do in the band, and they've got very good information about that. But we're now starting to get to what are the proposed regulatory solutions or recommendations that either ITU or CPT may agree on at the World Radio Conference, which will happen at the end of next year. And we can already see the signs of what's in that draft.
Yeah, and this is relevant not just to Region 1, but to all Region 1, 2 and 3.
So I mentioned Galileo. Exactly the same frequency and application is used in Japan under a system called QZSS. For many years, we've had the Russian GLONASS system in the bottom of 23 centimetres, and there's several more, actually.
Yeah.
So even if you're in America where they might not use those, it has implications for the other primary users who are moving around and are also losing spectrum to some newer applications, and therefore will give us another sharing problem.
Yeah. So what can the listeners do to help? Is this a case yet of them writing in to anybody somewhere like the politicians or anything, or we're not at the stage where we're going to lose the band or anything, are we?
Well, for UK listeners, we're in a slightly better position than some of the international listeners. Both the Commission and Ofcom eventually will start their formal consultations as they usually do. There's plenty of background material, including in RSGB news and on our website and on the IRU website.
Yeah.
But as a secondary user, we have to be very respectful that, no, we're still obliged to not interfere. So the key thing is to show we're not a threat. People are treating it as a worst case.
Yeah.
And, of course, the number of active 23 centimetre transmissions is a relatively low proportion of overall amateur radio.
Yeah.
But they take it as a worst case. Well, some administrations take, when you are transmitting as worst case, and therefore that's what the basis is. So we'd like their response to be well thought through and proportionate, I think, is our approach.
Yeah. And okay, so this was the interim meeting, and that's now finished, I take it. That was just yesterday?
Yes, so that interim meeting was a great opportunity for our microwave manager, as I say, to present the latest update to all the other member societies who are gathered here, because whilst obviously we have a closer insight as RSGB volunteers, the other member societies hadn't been updated, not so much on the challenge, but on this new stage in the process.
Okay, so I mean, my next question is, where does it go from here? Is this something where those who attended the meeting go away and do a certain amount of work and then come back to the main meeting? Or, I mean, if the decisions are going to be made at the end of next year, then I think it's getting quite an urgent subject.
Yes, and IARU volunteers across the world, not, as I say, not just in Europe, have been working on that. The draft documents that we've seen, they were in meetings, in very long meetings in last month, and that process continues. So there's a whole set of preparatory meetings as those drafts and positions are refined.
Yeah.
But it can all change in the final conference, and we've had that before. So with 50 megahertz, which was the last cycle, we spent lots of effort on the preparations, and it all boils down to the final meeting. And of course, it's not just, say, a technical thing. Sometimes politics can...
Yes, as we know. Okay, well, thanks very much, Murray, for that very expansive explanation of what's been going on.
Work in progress.
Yeah. And thank you from ICQ Podcast for doing this work for all amateurs in, well, not just in the UK, but actually in the world in many ways, because we know and we do promote the fact that people should be a member of their national society, relevant to whichever country they live in, and carry on the good work, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm here again. It's Ham Radio 2022 at Friedrichshafen. I'm joined by Dave Crump from the BATC. Morning, Dave.
Good morning, Chris.
And nice to see you here. I know we chatted to you a little while ago. You did a little feature for us about amateur TV. How have things been since then?
Busy. We've got a couple of new projects going, and membership are taking to it very well, thank you.
Excellent, okay. And I can see you've got some equipment here on display. We've got a number of people seem to be taking interest. What have you got here to show people today?
We've got a core project, which is the Portsdown transmitter receiver that I talked about in the previous podcast. We're also showing the RIDE set-top box receiver. That's a really simple receiver that people can use for receiving video from QO100. But the new project we're showing is a repeater controller. Previously, most of the repeaters in the UK have been analog, so have just used standard definition television, not high definition television. And our new controller is aimed at moving those repeaters to high definition, so that people can get perfect quality pictures through their local repeater. And it's a really simple design based on a Raspberry Pi.
Fantastic. So again, you're sort of using the sort of consumer electronics and trying to keep it low cost, I'm guessing, and a lot of software based stuff.
I mean, the core of it is an HDMI switch that we buy from Amazon. It's consumer electronics is really driving progress in this area very well.
And have you met many people over the last to today? I guess yesterday, a little bit today. Have you got lots of people taking interest?
A lot of interest, especially from our overseas members who we normally don't get to meet. It's been great to put faces to names and email addresses.
Absolutely,
and hear their local challenges and how we can help them as well.
Absolutely. Now, one of the news stories we've been hearing about yesterday from some of the national societies is around the WRC happening. I think it's next year, and there's an agenda item around 23/7. Is that something that's going to affect amateur TV, do you think? Or?
It potentially affects amateur TV, but we've been ahead of the game in this for a while, and our new technologies that use narrow bandwidths for digital TV, we think in the eventual solution, if we still end up with a couple of megs there, we'll be able to continue doing what we do as part of the compromise. But we realise the negotiations are difficult on that.
Yeah, but I guess it sounds like you can work around with some of the technology you've got here, like you say, using much less bandwidth. You can kind of work around the restrictions, you think, potentially in the future.
Yes, things have moved on a lot in the last few years as to how much bandwidth we need.
Fantastic.
So I think our users don't need to be too worried, but we need to monitor it closely and keep lobbying.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Thank you, Dave. If people want to get more information about amateur TV, where's the best place for them to go?
Our website is the best starting place, www.batc.org.uk, and there are links on there to our wiki, which is full of the really detailed information.
Sure.
And if they were to join us for cyber membership, they get the quarterly magazine, which brings them up to date with the latest happenings in TV.
Excellent. Dave, thank you very much for your time, and have a great event here.
Thanks very much for talking to me.
Cheers, thank you.
Well, many thanks to our colleagues Ed Durant, DD5 Leon Papa, and Chris Howard, Mike Zero Charlie Tango Hotel, for very kindly providing us the first of their two reports from the Friedrichshafen show there in southern Germany. And it's great to have that show back after its hiatus for a couple of years. Now, I know it's probably a little bit smaller than it has been in the past, but hopefully with some support and some confidence, hopefully future shows will be back at the same size as before. But talking about shows and getting things back on track in some sort of normality, I know, Dad, you were at the Newbury rally as well recently, and how did you find that rally in terms of size and availability and feedback from the traders, etc.?
Yeah, I was, Colin. I had a great time down at Newbury. Went down with a couple of amateurs, a guy called Neil and Bob. Bob's a new foundation license holder. And we walked through the gate, and it was a lot bigger than I remembered it from a good few years ago. But there must have been a good couple of hundred traders there, or people selling. At least it was pretty packed. A lot of interesting stuff. I could say rubbish, but one man's rubbish is another man's treasure. And we wandered up and down. No big dealers there, obviously. It was more of a flea market type sale, but really, really interesting. And I wandered up and down the aisles, had chats with a few people, met a few listeners, which was great. I should have made notes, but forgive me, guys, I didn't. And bought a few items, Colin, but it was a really, really good day out. And for Bob, after he'd had a good rummage round, it was interesting for me to show him, because he's a new licensee, some of the history of amateur radio. So he'd look at the stand and go, those are quite cheap. And I say, I wouldn't touch them, Bob. Don't touch it. And then we'd look at HROs and 1155s. And I was explaining the history behind them and where they came from and why they were. And with the HRO, you change the coil packs and things like that for changing bands, which he was quite interested. And there was a ATU there, which somebody got the top off, and I spotted it got a roller coaster coil on it, the roller coaster inductor. and I was showing Bob that. And that worked quite well. So we enjoyed ourselves, and do it again next year. Now the other one is, and this is a blatant promotion, and I will do it in the next episode as well because I haven't got all the details in front of me. Bad person that I am. Is the Grand Field Day is happening on the 31st of July in Ashford in Kent, and we've been invited there along with other people. It's in a field behind a windmill and a great location. The other thing that most amateurs will like is it's free. You're correct. FREE. So it's free to turn up. It's free entry. It's free if you've got a table. There's no price for table. All Andy said, the organizer Andy said is, please turn up. But secondly, don't bring food and drink with you. We get the field and everything for free. There is a cafe on site. Please use the cafe for drinks and food. And so what you may save on entrance, you're about the same if you buy yourself something in the cafe. So all in all, last year Carol and I were there. We had a great time, and we're going to do it again this year. I believe Edmund's coming with us as well. So grand day out at the end of the month, Colin. A little bit long.
Yeah, well, in fairness, I don't think it's too much to ask to, say, after free entry, etc., to have a nice, maybe fresh bacon roll and a cup of coffee and enjoy that as you're, viewing the wares on display. So, look, I say, guys, support that one if you're in the area. And as I say, more and more we get out and about and support these events, not as it brings them back even stronger. But again, it's great to see everyone in person as well. So, it's positive in that side of things there. As I say, we are about 3 months or so away from UK Hamfest. So again, I think the more and more support we give every rally in the UK along these next few months, I think UK Hamfest obviously be a very strong showing in that respect. And then again, our friends in the States as well. Again, the more and more the dealers and the traders and the manufacturers get back up to strength with us supporting them at various events as well. It will obviously keep those things very positive, going forward, because they are great events, the Hamfest, and I'm sure as much as there's all the Zooms and the Teams and all the rest of those bits and pieces that go on. Obviously, it's great to be back in person. So obviously, bid for now. Right, well, as always, there's a few people we need to thank for helping us with this episode, as always. So we mentioned Chris and Ed who provided the feature for us. We really do appreciate that. On the News Round Table, we had Chris, Mike 0 Tango Charlie Hotel, Martin, Mike 0 Sierra Golf Lima, Frank, Kilo 4 Foxtrot Mike Hotel, Bill, Whiskey Charlie 3 Bravo, and Leslie, Golf 0 Charlie India Bravo for taking part in News Round Table. We thank you guys for taking part there. And as always, we'd like to thank our monthly and annual subscription donors for, helping us out with the base that we have for, paying our way and our bills, etc. Our next episode is our birthday episode, where we'll be 14 years old now as a podcast. So as I say, it's always a great opportunity for everyone to chip in and help out. It is our big donation drive for the year. So we will be setting up some new donation links, etc., for you to get involved and do that from there. And we'll pop out a link to you in our newsletters, etc., in the coming days to let you get involved there. But as I say, if you can consider us, it's wonderful. It does pay our way, and keeps all the bills being paid and keeping the show on the air. So we really do appreciate you guys helping us out. Right, well, I think that just about covers everything. I'm running through notes here, making sure we haven't missed anything. I don't think we have. So all that's left to do is to send you off to look after Mrs. B with a cup of tea and a bicky or a treat that you might be able to find, and bid yourself and listeners 73s, and hoping yourself a great time playing radio over the next fortnight.
Yeah, we'll do, Colin. I'll take your mum a cup of tea in a second and a nice chocky bicky, and then we're going to relax for a bit. So, okay, I'll say 73s to you. Look forward to meeting some of our listeners over the next few months when we're out and about. And, pretty much it's going to be good fun, Colin.
No problem at all. Well, 73's all, and I'll catch up on a fortnight's time.
73.